this is exciting safety. We can do benchmarkings and co-creation and all the. I believe that we can benchmark in with every kind of industry or military. So this exchanging, I think, is rich. And I think in the innovation, we can be innovated using this kind of process.
Once we set our core foundation of how we want and really knowing our area of responsibility and how it thrives and how we keep people safe and keep the mission going, we try to make sure we have some continuity in place so when they do come in, everything is kind of established and then we can make that culture. And one thing you guys may know of the military, something else can be a unicorn. We don't really have one culture. We have thousands of subcultures. So now we have to paint big picture culture, Air Force, but all the subcultures to make sure that, hey, everybody's still on the same accord.
And it really is such an honor to have you here because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how the military in lots of different countries, obviously we're talking to you here in the US with the US context, but militaries across the world in understanding that they do think about health and safety. There are different times and different scenarios when they're thinking about that. But it's an honor to have you here so that we can help people understand. And also another thing we talked about, wasn't it, was understanding that many people finish their time in their military and then they go into civilian life. And how can they do that and how, can they actually easily engage and move into the civilian life?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Headline Podcast. Today, we have a new episode for you. I am here with my co-host, Dr. Megan Tranter, and today she is in my Orlando studio with me. So before we introduce our special guest, I would like her to say hello.
Hello, Andreza. And it's so funny. Normally, we're saying hello from Orlando and Seattle.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time that we're together for Headline Podcast, which is really exciting for us to be here together.
Yes, I am. And now for our special guest, Danishon Felder. Welcome to Headline. Please introduce yourself for our audience.
Thank you both. First and foremost, I greatly appreciate the opportunity for you both having me here. We had a little discussion beforehand. I'll let you know how big of a fan I am with both of the content and the information you guys release to the world and the industry and just how much you really advocate for what we do. I'm Danishon Felder. I'm an Occupational Safety Manager with the United States Air Force. I'm also a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. I've been in right now about 32 years. And so right now it's an opportunity for me to really get what we do out in the United States Air Force, all just specifically the armed forces of safety professionals, but also come and just have great conversation with two people that I highly admire in this field. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. So I would like to start because I'm very curious about what made you choose this career.
I think most safety professionals have the same origin story. We stumbled on it. I was doing medical. I was a dietherapist in the United States Air Force when I first enlisted. And happenstance would have it was a gentleman that I was in the honor guard with. It's a special service that's also in the military. And I seen him one day. He's like, hey, I got an opportunity for you. What do you think about doing safety? I'm like, safety? I'm like, what's that? It took me a little bit of time to do some research. And once I found out what it was, I'm like, oh, I was pretty much all in. So signed up, and looking back in hindsight, 15 years later, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But it was a sense of curiosity at first, and then going through the ebbs and flows like every other safety professional does, passion, purpose. And then you start to get the intent. At first it's work, then it turns into a vocation, then it turns into a profession. So I went through pretty much the full arc into where I'm at right now, and I can look back and say it is the best decision I've ever made. Yeah.
Well, purpose, intent, so excellent. I when you start to talking about all these characteristics and purpose, values, and I think I saw my decision was in the same way. So wow, really appreciate.
And it really is such an honor to have you here, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how the military in lots of different countries, obviously we're talking to you here in the US with the US context, but militaries across the world, in understanding that they do think about health and safety. There are different times and different scenarios when they're thinking about that. But it's an honor to have you here so that we can help people understand. And also another thing we talked about, wasn't it, was understanding that many people finish their time in their military and then they go into civilian life. And how can they do that, and how, can they actually easily engage and move into the civilian life?
Yeah, it's a transition, because one thing about the military, they put you in this culture, and that culture is the military. And sometimes people, especially young men and women, are in that culture for 30 years, is a prime example. So not necessarily breaking that culture, but transitioning to what we call it the civilian world, transitioning into a world with a lot of the tools and attributes and skill sets as we've developed in the military. Sometimes it can be difficult. And that's one of the biggest things, the reason why we kind of here in Orlando right now with the Safety Professional Conference that's in Orlando, it's networking. So just to be able to be with fellow safety professionals and talk about not only what the military do, but what every other sector, every other industry, what they do, to see the commonalities, to trade and some inside trading, share some tactics, some tips, some tricks. And that also helps us prepare. So one of my biggest roles right now, what I do, I'm the Chief Enlisted Manager for the Air Force Reserve Command Safety Field. So now I get to take this information and bring it back to my guys and gals and say, hey, this is some things I've learned to help them better prepare also when their time comes and they're get ready to transition to, civilian sector world and get out of government or armed forces. And it's definitely a benefit that we're afforded to come here and gain some of this expertise, some of this experience from, man, thousands of people who share the same common interests we do.
I think there's 5,000 safety people at the conference and another 3,000 vendors. So we're certainly learning a lot, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I thought that number was undershot. It felt like 20,000 people in there. You shake so many hands and trade so many stories and conversations, and it's definitely well worth it.
I usually like to explore in your role now, what is the biggest challenge you face while building safety culture in a military base?
That's a loaded question. I'm gonna give you a scenario, and this is something that I tell people, and it always piques their interest. You come in as a safety professional. Say you're assigned we call it a wing. A wing is a business unit. So say you're in charge of a wing that could have anywhere around 1,000 to 2,000 active duty reservists, members assigned to that wing. You have a commander. We can call him the CEO. So right when you get your commander and you're a safety professional, you know how hard sometimes it is to get that buy-in, that stakeholder buy-in from the commander, and let them know the biggest intent of safety and what we do and how they can support and what we may need from them. So you talk to that commander, you build a relationship, Slowly they come around to your way of thinking. Slowly they come around to what safety is. And right when you get them where you want him or her, they leave. In 2 more years, the process starts over. And you get them to where they want, they leave. And so I've had right now, just call them CEOs. I've had 8 that I have to reset, start over, sales pitch, business case, give them educated and trained on what is safety, top down, what we need them to do to make sure that we're protected. And as you can see, that culture, it can take many shapes and forms, and it can start all over. But the biggest thing, what we try to do as a safety office of where I work now, once we set our core foundation of how we want and really knowing our area of responsibility and how it thrives and how we keep people safe and keep the mission going, we try to make sure we have some continuity in place. So when they do come in, everything is kind of established, and then we can make that culture. And one thing you guys may know of the military, something else can be a unicorn. We don't really have one culture. We have thousands of subcultures. So now we have to paint big picture culture, Air Force, but all the subcultures to make sure that, hey, everybody's still on the same accord. And sometimes it can be a daunting task, but it's well worth it, because I think that's what we're in the business for. You can see those tangible benefits when it actually takes shape, and the commander comes around, or the stakeholders come around, and the group commanders is what we call those guys also. And they're like, hey, you know what, that policy or that program or that process or that training, I get it now. And that's always the benefit. So that's always the best part.
In this way, discipline, I know, is part of the military culture. So how you can add value in a culture transformation, in a safety culture transformation? Do you see this as a add value or not?
It's a gift and a curse, because we can lead with the iron fist also, because it's called RHIP. Rank has its privileges. And so based on how much rank you have, the person under you will have to do what you say. But that's one of the disadvantages of safety. They're doing it not understanding the why. And so that's where the training and the learning comes in at, and the coaching comes in at. Like, I don't want it to just let you know, do this. No, this is why we wear PPE, or this is why you have to not walk on the wing of that aircraft, or this is why you have to learn these programs and processes and motorcycle and wear a helmet and all those little things that they consider to be real nuanced. Once we're able to grab their attention and release content and messaging and have one-on-one conversations, they start to really understand, like, oh, okay, this is safety. And I pride myself, or my team do. We joke all the time. We've never had a slogan. We're anti-slogan, because sometimes slogans can be misinterpreted. And we always felt it was a little bit better to just be straight shooters, be as direct as possible, but at the same time, be empathetic too. Because being the discipline piece and many other things in the military, it may prove to be an advantage, but when you're dealing with safety, it always backfire, because they're just doing it with no specific reason or intent behind it. And so pretty soon when you turn your head, they're going to go right back to the old way, and that culture is pretty much destroyed just as quick as you built it.
Okay.
I'm really curious about your comment about the thousands of safety cultures, because, and maybe this is the wrong way of thinking, but when I think about the military, I think about an organization that has certain ways of doing things because you need people to work together to achieve a common mission. Is that the same with safety as well? Or how should we think about these different safety cultures that might exist?
It is. It's the common goal. It's the big mission. But just like I kind of spoke to earlier, you have hundreds of wings who has their very own safety manager. So the way you may run your wing, the next person may not. Even though we have the same purpose as big picture Air Force or big picture Army, big picture Navy, but we may do safety, as we like to call it. We may do safety differently. And right now that can prove to be a disadvantage, because now when that person comes from that wing to your wing, they're used to doing safety a certain way. Now they have to buy into your culture. And so you have to integrate that person. You have to embed them with, these are our values, and this is what we hold true to this specific base of what we consider to be my area of responsibility. This is how we do safety, and this is what's going to keep us safe, and this is what's going to remove you from any hazard, minimize that risk, and get you home every day to your wife, your kid, your parents. That's our intent. That's the purpose. So that's when you have the multitude of cultures, and sometimes they can clash, but it takes you having your culture kind of set in stone, and you're willing to bend somewhat just to make sure that we can execute the mission the correct way. But sometimes it comes and you mentioned it, the discipline can come in a little bit, but just to you have to do it this way here. And I know how you did it there and it was effective, but here it's way more important because we have a totally different purpose.
So
what
it
we do.
sounds like they allow the different units to have flexibility given the context. Is that how it
Absolutely.
works? Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to. We try to, and we're just rolling this out. One thing you guys make, if you didn't know, I'll be the first to. I like to pull back the curtain a little bit. I love the institution, but at the same time, it's some things that, of course, we always have to improve. And sometimes we can be slow on the draw. So the way it can be advancing on the outside in the civilian world, the military is a little bit more policy. It takes a little while to come around. So now we're really taking more of a risk standpoint, not as much safety. Still safety, EHS is going to be there, but far more risk. And with that risk, we're doing way more risk-based decision making. Like you're the onus in this. If you're put in this situation and you have to make this work at this time, regardless of what protocol says, I need you to weigh the scenario, go through your protocol in your mind of how you've been trained, and you have to make the best decision possible. We give you the onus to do that in this specific case. So we've really been facilitating that risk-based decision making lately. And it's just due to the climate right now. Just rolling out SOPs and instruction after instruction that may have been good 10, 20 years ago, but right now it's not because we're dealing with, and everybody sees it. We're dealing with a whole different demographic. It's two infamous words, Gen Z and Millennials. You can't just give them structure. They have to have some leverage to execute because normally when they execute, they're going to teach us old Gen X's and baby boomers something too. And so we're starting to really notice that. Unfortunately, a lot of leadership within the Air Force, they understand that also. And so they're really behind it. And that's all we want. That's the ultimate, I would say, emphasis on stakeholder engagement. That's it. Just try to know what we're doing. What's the mission? How can we make it more efficient? How can we stop people from getting hurt? Because our people getting hurt is different than productivity. Our people getting hurt is now when it comes time for something simple as combat, we don't have those bodies to go over there. So it's a totally different purpose of kind of what we safeguard.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Diversity, thinking about diversity is an important part of your job. So working with a team, can you bring to us some experience about you are improve, engage, thinking diversity?
Oh, absolutely. Coming from small town Mississippi, I was used to one specific demographic. Everybody looked like me. Everybody talked like me. It was comfortable. Once I got thrown in the United States Air Force, it was a culture shock because now you're dealing with so many different ethnicities, nationalities, races, and then you start to see the way that you were raised isn't like everyone else and how they were raised. And I say that to say, now imagine when you have that diversity sitting at a table. You think your way is the right way until you hear someone else's perspective. And the first thing you think is like, I never thought of that. It kind of makes sense. And so now you get to pass that around more and more and more. And so it works out. We just did an article for my safety shop right now, and we're a 5-man shop. And in that 5-man shop, one, you have 4 generations in the workforce, from Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z, and Boomer on the other side. But not only that, you have an African American, you have someone from from Scotland, Scottish roots, Canadian roots, uh, Mexican Salvadorian roots, Philippine roots. That alone, when us five come to a table, and just imagine the culture, the backgrounds, the upbringings, the different spread out pieces of the United States of America, you're going to get, man, just a clash of perspective but that's beneficial. And it
Yes.
makes, and that's to me is that's the epitome of diversity. And that's one thing, if nothing else, the millions of things that the military get right, that's one of the things that's out front. You're going to be in a diverse network of everybody, and you have no choice but to get along and try to find some common ground, because we know what we're pretty much there for and what we signed up for. It's a volunteer basis. And so we know, hey, this can work.
In this kind of environment, what is the role of a safety manager?
The environment, just the
Like,
climate period.
multicultural, generation, so diversity. So how you watch your role today
Mhm.
and how you describe the challenges of this role?
This role is everything. I think this role is one of the biggest things, and Dr. Tranter kind of hit on it so eloquently today in her seminar. The technical Tom, mm-mm. You can pull up standards and regulations and guidance from everywhere. If you don't really have, I don't really like call them core competencies. I think they're life competencies. But if you don't know how to relate to people, I think you're going to be in for a shock. And we noticed that we were in my organization, we were very compliance driven. Within the last couple of years, we tripled, quadrupled down on HOP, human and organizational performance. Because what we're facing right now, we no longer could just rule with the iron fist. We had to really get to know people. People make mistakes. We had to blame fixes nothing. Learning is vital. The way leadership responds matter. uh, Outcomes, for context drive outcomes. Once we embedded those 5 processes, it's pretty much the way we live now, because it works. No one knows how to do the work better than that person. And it took me a long time in my ways to be, I'm a big CSP guy, and I went to school for such and such, and I'm credentialed, and I have stakeholder buy-in, and I know the business side. But yet, that person who's working day in and day out on that specific thing that I'm trying to tell them to not do, who am I? They know exactly what they're doing. So now we had, what? It may be time to look at our culture. It may be time to look at our safety management system. It may be time to look at the way we're doing business. And once I start, as everyone else, listening to the Sidney Deckers and Todd Conklins, I'm like, man, this kind of makes sense. I want to look into this a little bit more. And once I did that, that was it. We seen our wing just take a totally different shape based on the members, who work there, and far more just coming through, pointing out things that's wrong, but just trying to really understand that local rationale. That person did that for a reason. Let's just find out that reason. Maybe we're doing it wrong. And once we find out the reason to why, it make us go back and open up our books and say, we've been getting it wrong. They've been getting it right. And so we're very much in tune with the black line, blue line. Like, we know how work imagine's supposed to go, but even if they're dodging in and out, if they're doing it safe, risk-based decision making, if they're trying to still make sure they pull it off and get the job done effectively and efficiently, that's really the outcome, and that aligns with the strategic outcome, for what we do.
I remember someone said to me once in a big company that I worked for that when you have this big ship, imagine like a big tanker ship or a aircraft carrier or something like that, that to turn the ship takes a really long time. Is that what you're finding as well? Because some of the things you're talking about really are different ways of thinking about safety. And in theory, they sound good. And probably in practice, they're amazing. But when you're dealing with different levels in the organization and people who've been there for 20, 30, 40 years that have earned their stripes a certain way, how hard is it? Honestly, that's the question is how hard is it to move that big ship?
Yeah, if you didn't know, people don't like change. Definitely being sarcastic. So people, I can only use myself as a case study. And that's one thing I've been fortunate to do. I always look at myself and I know how I have a system in place and I built something and it works. I'm from the old credo, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Why would I even fix it? But yet, that is going to eventually cause some chaos because you're just waiting for disaster to happen when you could have seen it coming. Therefore, Hop was a great example. Seeing something that was coming down the pike and saying, hey, the way we've been, our safety management system and just coming through with clipboards and checklists, and that may not be it. We're coming through really black hatting it, coming through just looking for things to go wrong and trying to fix it. We have to be a lot more premeditated in the sense of preventive. We have to really get out there and coach these people and learn from these people and build these learning teams and try to understand, because right now it's a sense of you have something already, you have a process already established, and you want to just you want to ride that as long as possible. And at the same time, it's never supposed to be like that. So, and I have a large amount of friends in the safety industry, and they say the same thing. Like, man, but it's been working and it's flawless. No, no, no. We think it's flawless because bubbling underneath, it's only a matter of time. And so once we get sold on that and say we're trying to make that change, now we have to sell that to the top and we have to sell that to leadership. And they're going to say the same thing we said. What do you mean? This has been working. Why would you even think about changing it? Or why would I have to pay for this training? Or why do I have to bring in this expert to do this? And so all those things. And it's always going to be a task. That's why I think as a safety professional, one of the biggest attributes or skill sets that we can develop is sales. And a lot of us don't think like sales. I mean, I'm not working at, a car dealership. No, no, no. We have to really learn how to sell it because we're selling it based on injury rates. No, 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 no. We have to sell it based on cost benefit analysis, what it's going to save in the long run, numbers, analytics. And so that's one of the biggest things that we discuss all the time. And one of the reasons that I went back to school and got an MBA, because I noticed my gap. My gap was, again, I was just technical guy, and talking to leadership was just falling flat because they're talking business and I'm talking safety, and we'll never coexist. And so I had to really learn that language of operations, production, formulas, um, just really get into the mind of their thinking from such a high strategic level, and I'm thinking from a tactical level that we have to meet somewhere. And once I start really getting that insight and understanding and networking, especially with directors on the outside who work in that corporate world, I've seen how it translates also into the armed forces, and we were able to use that, and it worked. But
Do you ever have a time where, you were mentioning earlier that you've had quite a few bosses? Is there ever a time where you're doing the sales to them about this different way of working and they're not buying what you're selling?
oh,
And what do you do?
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But fortunately, it's the sense of you have to. I tell people all the time because I've seen it firsthand, just based on your example. One thing about leadership, if they are being resistant, they're not being resistant, they just don't know. If you're able to really train them and sit them down, and we'll take them out on a gimbal walk. We'll take them out on a managed by working or walking around. We take them out to let them see then they're able to now put some context on, oh, okay, this is totally different than what I imagined you guys did. Because a lot of times they're just looking at one specific number. Who's not getting hurt? If no one's getting hurt, and that's always a disadvantage for any safety professional, because leadership is always going to look at it like this. If you're not getting hurt, are you doing a good job, or do I really need you? So yeah, we're always battling between those two of just really trying to make sure we keep them not necessarily bought in. That's such a cliche way to say it, but you want them bought into your system. But it has been resistance. But I noticed a offhand 3 that I may have a little resistance with. It was just a sense of education, training, showing them what we do, a little look behind the curtain, keep messaging, just putting things in context that they can understand, removing a lot of the safety jargon, make it so they can really understand what are we doing, what do we need money for, what do we need help for, why do we need more manning, why would we get another safety professional. Once they're starting to understand those things, then it's like anything else. One thing about any type of person, CEO or otherwise leadership, once it makes sense to them, normally they're all with it. It just has to make sense, figuratively and literally. It has to make some type of sense on both ends, profit and people.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Do you find that you have to use a different approach between the normal business, the day-to-day work that the military is doing, versus contemplation of when they're in combat? Can you still use that same approach, and maybe it's not you, but maybe it's the apparatus, maybe it's the leaders as well.
Absolutely.
Do they have to sort of switch between their ways of leadership? Because, one of the things that Andreza and I are enjoying with the conversations on Headline is talking about leadership and how people lead in different ways, in different contexts and circumstances. My guess would be that it's different, but a lot of what you're saying, I'm really changing the way I think about things.
No,
So
but
tell us more.
You're spot on. They do. They have
Yeah.
to. The way the processes and things that we have in play or in stone, you could even say. The terminology always stateside, and then you have deployment, which we call downrange. Those things are going to be totally different. It's a totally different intent, totally different purpose. We're going to still have a level of safety, but yet remember, underneath the blanket of safety, you also have risk. The risk tolerance is going to be a little different. What can be accepted back in soil, now you're in someone else's nation, you may not want to accept that, or you may accept more because you know what you're trying to pretty much do. So one of the biggest things I've always been, especially lately, is I'm very empathetic towards leaders because I get it. I think a lot of people, it's easy to armchair quarterback. I would have did this, or you should have did that. But at the same time, being in that specific man or woman's shoes, I see it from their angle. And that only came with maturity. Of course, I didn't know it as a young guy coming up in the military or coming in as a young safety professional. But I was able to really see it once I start understanding business and just the level of scrutiny they get, and not knowing they have a boss also. For some reason, we think it stops at those guys. Even the CEO has a board of directors, so everyone has someone they answer to. But I do notice that sense of decision making has to totally change. But what they're going to try to do is have a sweet medium in between, that they don't deviate too much, because again, it goes back to specifically like Andreza mentioned, you can destroy culture like that too, because it's hard to have culture here, go here it changes, go here it changes. So you can still have some things embedded within that you're taking wherever you're going across the globally, no matter if you're fighting or no matter if you're in peacetime. So those things still hold a lot of weight, and leadership is the backbone of that and how they view it. And the more they're familiar with safety and risk, the more efficient they're going to be. Because if they've never seen a safety professional at all, once they deploy, that's going to be their best friend. They're going to be like, I didn't even know you existed. Oh yeah, we exist. You know, just like everybody got famous around COVID as a safety professional. But you always had a guy in the back office. You just never knew him. But now you're looking at, N95 masks. Now you know you have that guy. And we joke about that all the time. We know every safety professional became superstars during that time, and an asset to any company.
I was reading some material from you, and I was inspired about you changing the safety office into an operational strategy system. Can you describe this initiative or strategy? I don't know.
Yeah, it was just knowing the makeup, knowing what was under my control, and knowing what was not working. And again, I'm really, it was only a matter of time, I felt, when something bad could have happened. Because if nothing happened in my book, that's even worse, because at least I can have something to put a finger on. And so I always wanted to build something. So I started really speaking with a lot of different safety professionals throughout the community and some of the things they were doing. I had a guy I was speaking to at Range Rover, and another guy at Toyota, and someone else that was working at Pepsi. And I wanted to take something that would fit our system and would make sense, and not have to really run it to too many policymakers, something that we could really do in-house. And we could more than likely make it a best practice. And that's what it was. Just trying to design something that was more digestible, but just really hit some of the gaps that I felt that we were a deficit at. And so really that operational piece of it is like, this may be it. And it implemented, I would say, again, with change, slowly giving it to leaders, slowly, piece by piece by piece. And then they finally call hold to it, like, hey, okay, now I fully understand it. And so now we kind of roll it out and open for feedback. That's the main thing. I think with any process or program, it should always be a living document. You can always scratch something out. You can always type over something. You can always change it. It doesn't have to be in stone. And so everything is we're advocates for continuous process improvement in the military. You can always call it CPI. You can always get better. Anything can always be more efficient. It can always be more effective. It just has to make sense. It has to not waste man hours and waste dollars and not waste taxpayer dollars. It has to be efficient as possible. And also, I don't want to say run on its own, but not have to take too much on work from people, just in case someone in that system is taken out of pocket. So the continuity is a big piece also. But so that was kind of the thought behind that. I'm a best practice guy. If I see something that's working, if you say, hey man, those tennis shoes can make you dunk, I'm gonna buy those tennis shoes because I believe you. And then I try them on and I can't, then I'm like, okay, I'll pivot to something different, because maybe that wasn't for me, or maybe that wasn't for our organization and our strategic objective, or the way the commander was viewing that, the leader was viewing that. Collaboration is a big thing. I want everybody to be on the same page, because I'm sure it'll work flawlessly if everybody's moving in the same rhythm, in harmony, or whatever you pretty much roll out. And safety is no different.
Yeah.
I've seen so many different processes. I'm pretty sure you have so many programs, trainings, and that worked for you guys. But for my guys, I know our culture, it won't go nowhere. So we're going to modify it somewhat, but we'll take some of those best practices.
And I think this is exciting safety. We can do benchmarkings and co-creation. in all the I think I believe that we can benchmark in with every kind of industry or military. So this exchanging, I think, is rich.
Absolutely.
And I think in the innovation, we can be innovated using this kind of process. So good.
I agree.
Because the reality is even in the military, there's probably a lot of activities that are done elsewhere as well,
Activities as in,
whether it's construction
oh,
or making meals.
yeah, it's so many different functions.
Yeah.
It's so many different functions because it's I tell people all the time, it's no different than the outside. It's just you have everything in one. If you go to any fully operational wing installation, you're going to have it all: food services, mortuary affairs, security, police, who's doing combatives. And each one of those jobs, all the maintainers that's working on the aircraft, because that's another thing with the safety professionals in our world. Normally on your installation, you have an airframe or aircraft. You have to know about that aircraft also. So now you have a little bit of aviation safety. So you have to know all those things, but you have all that big melting pot of things that can get people hurt. And it's like anything else. You don't really have to be a master of it all, but you have to be a little bit dangerous. You got to know some things and know some people to call and know some people to get in your inbox and get in their inbox and be able to give them a text, because it's every function. We have all the different arms. Right now, our area of responsibility: logistics, operations, again, security forces, food service. We do it all admin. It's everything. So manufacturing, and then construction. We still dabble in those things also. So it's always knowing where the hazards are and what are the risks coming from those hazards. That's safety 101 before you step foot and do any type of paperwork. What's there and what's going to get people hurt.
I can't imagine how big your contacts must be in your phone with all these different people from different industries and areas, as well as within the military themselves. Because as you're saying, you like getting good practices from others and then sharing those as well.
You do. And it's so many different platforms out right now. I'm going to give you a little story and you're going to find it's pretty funny. I got hold of this pamphlet, and it was LinkedIn Mastery for Safety Professionals by Dr. Megan Tranter. I'm like, what is this lady talking about? And it was just how to boost your networking and how to boost your LinkedIn profile. I read that thing from cover to cover at least once every 2 months and seen my LinkedIn profile grow. But more than that, I was able to make some amazing connections just by boosting somewhat of a brand and credibility of knowing I'm in a safety career field. So now safety is globally. So now you got people just reaching out, and I've reached out to everybody. I can just name drop and was more taken back how willing they were to respond like this. And we're talking about people who's working for L'Oreal and people who's working for big box companies. Like, oh, just tell me what you need. I just want to get a call. And then once you get that call, now you're starting to really see some things and hear some things and benchmarks and best practices, just like Andreza mentioned. But yeah, that was my introduction to you, was that 40 page pamphlet of this is how you can boost your LinkedIn profile, really about networking. So I loved it.
You're making me a little embarrassed here, Dash.
True though. It is definitely true. True.
Talking about collaboration, when you're talking about aircraft and in commercial aviation, you have some collaborative conversation in terms of requirements, regulations.
Oh, absolutely. FAA, everything.
Wow.
Just like a lot of, especially safety professionals don't really know, OSHA still has leeway to come on the installation. They still can come and do a walkthrough, inspection, everything. Now we have a reception plan if they were to come on. Now, if they come on and find something, it's not necessarily a fine, but it can be detrimental to that installation also, depending on what they find. But all our aviation goes through FAA. Every governing body that's on the outside still has a little piece within the military piece also, sector. We used to be able to wave this flag called military unique. Now you can't even do it anymore because more of our standards, which One of our most popular standards used to be 1,000 pages. Now it's only like 400 because that same material was in general industry and in construction. So the military and our policymakers always felt, why would we even need our own if we can just grab that? And pretty soon, as we see it, another decade, I don't think we will really have Air Force instructions or standards. I think everything will be based on OSHA and NFPA and things of that nature.
I was thinking about it. You mentioned talking about the business language, collaboration. So this is some qualities, some competences for the safety professionals. You have a list about all the 5 competences that all the safety professionals must have.
Yeah, unfortunately it changes a lot because you go through your gaps and you go through your ebbs and flows. I think right now it's the human is so important now. Everything was always centered around
Human centricity.
and that's just now those skills, just the listening and communicating orally, written, and just if anything, I'll be the first to say as a military person who can easily fall along the lines of being an alpha male, me being empathetic was the hardest thing. Because I'm one of those, suck it up, get it done. That doesn't even fly anymore. So being able to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand, again, the learning teams, the HOP, is going to make it more efficient and more effective. But you just, those core competencies right now, majority, all of those just really center around that person. And it varies. It varies. I've had list of 20, and I'll have list of, if I actively listen, instead of just, I really listen, like paraphrasing and trying to understand, listening to understand. I was bigger listening to reply guy. Like I have a preloaded question. As soon as you're done, I'm gonna put it out there.
But return to the point of culture transformation and add these competences and qualities. All this start with building trust. How are you facing this?
And you just named the most difficult one, because they already have a label on you as a safety professional, even as a leader. The biggest thing is, man, I've always found, me personally, just being vulnerable, just really trying to be vulnerable and this is one thing people know, especially trust in our guys and gals in the military. Once they know you don't know and you won't admit that you don't know, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. They can see straight through it. Coming and letting them know you don't know gives them a little sense of, you know what? For that person to be that vulnerable with that much rank and tell me they don't know, I kind of respect that. And if you do it over and over, not in a sense of being incompetent, but in the sense of being authentic and trying to be honest, and they know you're there to help them, majority of the times we do get out and walk, it's nothing even safety related. It's more just to have conversation. It's more just to see how the day is going. What can we do? What do you need down here? Who's come down here to check on you? How about you come shadow us? Come to our office, see what we do. We'd like you to be a part of our committee. That stuff right there, that's the trust building. But it doesn't, if it stops with us, it still falls flat. So now we have to spread that language to the leadership also. Like, they have to trust you too. So now if you have, again, one big culture, and even if you have a little 50, 60% of trust just bleeding through it, you'll be okay. But once there's no trust, that's when it gets dangerous.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
And in the same direction, continuing this journey, this road, building trust, engage leadership. What do you think the mentoring programs? Because I read about, you are a big fan about this kind of program. So do you think good examples in military organizations with mentoring programs?
I do. I like mentoring. To me, it's just one of those best kept secrets. It's always been there. It just never really had a title. People were doing it. They just, oh, that's just my guy, or that's my friend. But that person, it didn't occur to them that every time they're with that person, they're giving them some type of like real life-changing instruction and advice and being an ear to them. And it finally put a label like, oh, that's what this is. And so the Air Force did a great job. About 5 years ago, they rolled out a mentoring program. And so now the junior enlisted or the younger airmen, they actually get with someone who's a little bit more seasoned, has a little bit more rank, which we call senior non-commissioned officers. And now they get mentored by that person. And so I'm just a fan of it. And I'm a case-by-case scenario also. My safety career, I would say my trajectory was really getting its feet when I gained a mentor. Because I was one of those guys like, man, I don't want no CSP. I'm like, why would I need that? Or why should I read that book? Or why should I? You're talking to some people more and more. You're being around the right circles, at the right tables. You start hearing certain things. And then you notice like, man, this guy calls me like every 2 weeks. And then you look back in hindsight, you're like, man, that was my mentor. And I never really knew that because I'm also prone to see real mentors. You'll never know it anyway. If they really want to take you under their wing, they're not going to tell you like, hey, I'm your mentor. They're just going to do what they see. They're going to give you the potential that they see in you. And so, but yeah, you hit it. I'm a advocate for mentorship, good mentorship, because it can also fall flat. But really, I think anytime you can save anyone just a little bit of strain, headache, tribulation, you should do so. And even if you know it may not be well received, I think it will be. They're still going to receive it. They just may never tell you. And I've been in that situation where I've told some just superstar safety professionals some things, and I didn't think they carried it out. And then you look back a year later, like, you did. We had that conversation, and you kind of executed exactly what we spoke of. So yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up. I am a champion for mentorship. I think it's very beneficial.
You're dropping such amazing knowledge nuggets here because recently Andreza and I talked to an expert on mentoring, and we were actually talking about it, weren't we, before we talked to you today? And what we were saying was that the conversation with her totally changed the way we thought about mentoring, not dissimilar to what you were just talking about. I used to think of it as nearly like a power relationship between a mentor and a mentee. But now there's this different way of thinking about mentorship, which is not like that at all.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. It's I think we're starting to see that right now. And man, I'm noticing the climate. I'm noticing society. And man, we're giving these little Gen Zs too much grief. They're so smart. To me, the Millennials and the Generation Z, they've placed that title on a mentor. They've said, hey, if you're going to step in this role and say, you're my mentor, you're going to earn being my mentor. And so now it gives people who are considered to be mentors a true sense of obligation. Like, you know what, if I'm going to take this person's time and meet them, coffee, take them out, send them this Word doc, send them this PDF, send them this article, I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence also and making it count for that person. And so that's a sense of, it's not to be taken lightly. And that's why I think it's really taking shape. And it's a man, it's about 1,000 catchphrases that I really could do without right now, but not mentorship. That's one I think is just only going to get more efficient, better, because now people are starting to see, not only do I want a mentor, now I want a sponsor. Now I want the person who's advocating for me when I'm not even in the room. Now that's a different level. And that came from mentorship. Having someone that said, hey, I'm going to mentor you, but I know this guy, you should meet him because he's someone that probably can get your name or get your resume on the top of the pile. He's someone that also gets your interview, and he don't have to know you, but he knows me. So he can sponsor you. And that's just the separation, the 6 degrees of separation. And that's one of the strongest things I see about just the industry of safety. Man, we will really push and be a supporting system for anybody who has that same mindset and within that same industry sector realm of what we do, because we understand what they're going through. We have a commonality that makes way more, that can have way more tangible benefit than anything else.
Yeah. In this interview that Megan mentioned, I learned that mentoring is a culture. And I think this culture could catalyze the safety culture.
Absolutely. It is. It's it's one of those brick by brick things. Slowly, but you're starting to see it. You're starting to see more people talk about it. And you can see it, like we mentioned, just all over LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just full of mentorship, and you see people, you read the case studies, and they're telling you, hey, this person did this, and this person did that. So we know it's not just for clicks. They want that person to get their just deserves because they know what that person did for them also. But it's man, that's just such a great topic. You guys can do 4 shows just on mentorship, because that's how powerful it is right now, because we need it. We definitely need it, because someone's walked that same path and they stumble, but now they have that yellow brick road and they can put you right down it. Like, hey, just go that way.
My learning was that mentorship and mentoring is about curiosity and learning. The old way that I used to think about it was that it was unidirectional, that it was a more seasoned or experienced person who mentored someone who was less experienced. But after more recent conversations, I think about it totally different. And even when you're talking about the different generations, one can appreciate that there are gifts of insight and knowledge and experiences that others can teach you as well. And even when you don't realize you're being mentored or that you're learning something, when you truly open up and say, wow, thank you so much. I actually didn't think about it that way, or I have just learnt something different. It makes you realize that mentoring is absolutely massive.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I have 5 mentors. So I have one for faith, because that person speaks that language to me, and I have another for career progression, both sides, military and civilian. One that's preparing me to transition into the civilian world, and also one that's the military guy. And I also have my little Gen Zer, who's the AI. See, I have no idea what AI and TikTok, certain dances, slang. I need to know all that. So that person actually gives me that information. And they love it because it makes me feel super old. But I'm like, you know what? It makes sense. And then just a couple of more just little things for us. It's just specificity. So everyone plays a part, and no one crosses over the other's threshold, because they all specialize in one specific thing I need them for. Because what I need at this point in my life, there's not one person who can satisfy those layers, because I'm just a complex person. So having that realm of people just gives me so much more insight, and it helps me with other people also. Helps me be a better mentor.
Yeah. And helps you not just with be a better mentor, but I think a better person and
Oh.
guarantee your physical health, your mental health. I think the value that we can add with this kind of process, in this kind of relationship, wow, it's amazing.
Just based on what's going on right now, just the mental health piece, that alone is the support system people need, because it's not as open. People are not as transparent as we think they are. They're not as candid as we think they are. They're only going to say what's bothering them to the circles they feel comfortable with. But yet the circles they're not speaking to with what they may be going through, those are the ones that's actually going to come and help to that specific problem in that area. And so that's why that's just your tribe. I look at mentorship like that. Like, you have a tribe, and that tribe is going to really, even if it's one person, be able to help you out with so many different facets of life. And you said it so eloquently. Those people have made me a better, not even just, I named objectives, but husband, father, man of God, that's where they really come in handy at and have the most benefit, because now I'm able to see that, because we just log into our computer, that's work, but yet we're human 24/7. And so we want to make sure we morals and principles and all those things are even more important than anything that we could possibly do.
Explore the mental health. I would like to know how you understanding this scenario in military organizations. How is the mental health of the professionals that are in military? Because we know this is a big trending. So inside the military organization, you are facing this trend.
Oh, absolutely. If you guys know the military pieces, you hear that 4-letter acronym all the time, PTSD. And that's always going to be alive and well, just based on what we're exposed to and the environments that we're in. And again, one of the best things, and it's fortunate what the military does, they have so many programs just put in place for those times and those situations, because it's just like I mentioned, you're dealing with a bunch of sometimes alpha males who are not quick to tell you if anything's wrong with them until that bottle and that cap has now exploded. And that's when it's almost too late. So having those preventative measures in place, and having the right physicians, and having the right communities, and having the right family and readiness programs that's set up for them, and being able to educate also their spouse. Because just imagine, some of these gentlemen leave for a year and come back. Simple math, their home is nowhere near what it was when they left, because now whatever spouse, man or male or female, they had to continuously keep the house going. So now they have to get reacclimated. And I think that's one of the things that was beforehand. It was always educating the person coming back. But what about the person who was still at home? Because now they have to welcome that person back, and say can't welcome that person back with like, hey, this is the list I have for you, and these are the chores I need you to do. It takes a reintegration process, but it goes to, that's the biggest piece for us. The armed forces has totally just changed that perspective and mindset, because you mentioned culture, that's culture. And that culture has always existed. Like, the guys who come back and can't get any help, what is the military to blame? And absolutely, to the point of, it was a sense of not knowing. Could be getting compensated, but not knowing the aftercare. And so that's one of the biggest things that we always face. Any armed forces, not even the Air Force, just all 5 branches, is that we're exposing people to combat and have them come back to the United States and expect them to carry on like nothing ever happened. It'll never happen like that unless some programs and things are in place to welcome them back with support, and welcome them back with mentorship, and welcome them back with someone who's just came over and got acclimated. And I can tell you the steps of what you need to do to make sure that you're good to go when you come back. Because that's one of the things we mentioned of the safety professionals that a lot of the civilian world doesn't see. We have another piece where, we travel to engage in something just to make sure that we keep our homeland safe. And that'll always be really our ultimate goal, because that's what we signed up for. We just happen to be good at safety, but yet our main job is, making sure that we're protecting.
I find this conversation fascinating from a number of perspectives. One of them is that when, let's say, people are away from home for a while for work, whether it's a day or a week or months or even, more than a year, and then they come home, how many employers really help the family reacclimate the person back into that home environment? And it makes me think and wonder, maybe it's a question, is how innovative really is the military in thinking about all of these other topics outside of the stock standard health and safety risks and topics? Whether it's developing different technology, or perhaps because of some of the situations and conditions that people are exposed to, they're actually innovating at a faster rate than you might see in private industry, for example.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that?
They are. But just some backstory, it was give and take, because a lot of those private sector practices we adopted. We just happened to adopt them and make them a little bit better. And so now we give those back because they have people. It's a lot of different industries where they'll send people, to the Middle East for 6 months to do safety and bring that person back, knowing that, hey, that person's been exposed to something. But it was a slow process. It was a slow process to the point. That's one thing that you couldn't really get 100% efficient, because it's ebbs and flows. And one thing, just knowing your intelligence and your studies, you can only imagine the history of war. They're not all the same. So right when you have a certain process to acclimate a certain group, the next group may not take on to that process. So you're always updating it and always making it for the times, because it's going to change and it's going to continuously change. And no matter what's going on now, we know if we ever face another situation, the process that people may have been through Desert Storm, that's not going to stick. Now you have to change it a little bit more. But what we do and what's happening, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, people really couldn't imagine the support of those Fortune 500 companies with the military and the things they're willing to do in the programs and the investment. And hey, we built this employee action program that you may want to modify, or you want to do this, or it's definitely a full-blown collaborative piece, because I've seen it. I've been able to speak to some of these leaders on the outside just to get their perspective on military. And that's some of the things that I didn't know, just really coming through the ranks until I got to a certain stature. And I'm like, I never knew that it was such, a collaboration going on behind the scenes of what they're doing. One of the biggest pieces was that just, man, that's human centric at its finest, because if you bringing them back and they're not able to do their job, they're not able to perform at all, you talking about production when it stops, that can halt, because now you have 200-300 people who really can't even integrate back in society, let alone work. So that's always going to be just top of the list. And as I said, the good old military has really got that right within the last couple of decades of just making sure that everything is in order for when those situations do happen. Then a lot of contingencies across, if a person does go to combat, things that can be done over there to make sure that they're taken care of too before, our people even come back over here. And so that's always trial and error. That's the epitome of trial and error and process improvement. And now those improvements are really a lot of when money gets split up, now a lot of that bulk budget goes to the right places. And that's a place where it should always stop in that situation.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it. So you're talking about partnership and innovation. Do you think the military thinks of themselves as being innovative? Because you see, I used to work for a tech company, and, you see things coming out where different sectors think they're innovative. But I wonder, what does the military think of what they're doing?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We're starting to just programs, spark tanks, innovation hubs, really enlisting people that's in the private sector to come in and give innovation. How can we improve anything? How can we make our aircraft way more efficient on fuel? How can we make better aircraft? How can we make a better, like they consider us to be warfighter? How can we make a better warfighter? What about uniforms? How can we make them less cool? It's always an idea. And a lot of the ideas, because they do competitions yearly, who has the brightest idea? A lot of the ideas come from a lot of your your junior airmen, because they've come into a system where they're so fresh eyes and perspective. They're like, man, you guys been doing this for 30 years? We could have did this way easier. And they're doing it easier. So yeah, this is probably and it's always going to get better, but this is the most cutting edge, because I see some of the stuff that's being produced and some of the stuff that's coming out and some of the conversations. And I'm like, man, it's needed though, because even now, AI is, we're doing pretty much everything like the private sector for us. Any type of we have our own GPT. We have pretty much everything that we can make a lot more efficient and eliminate man hours and cut time. And we're trying to do that. Yeah.
When we start this conversation, talk about transitions. Né? So after 32 years in military, so when you're thinking about your legacy, what do the legacy that you want to leave?
Man, you got some great loaded questions. It's so layered. That's why I like it. I'm complex, but I'm simple. I just really want my legacy to be that he just did what he needed to do when he didn't want to do it, but he knew it was required. It's just it. It's just simple. I just want to just be a good person and like really look back at it. And they always say if you're able to hear what's being read about you, when it's that time, it's like, you know what? That guy always did what he said he was going to do. And he always did it with enthusiasm. And he always did it because he knew what the end goal would be. And he would do it all over again. And it was selfless. That's the biggest thing. And I thank, God all the time for just the maturation process, just being able to mature, because, me sitting here, that I would have never spoke nowhere near this 30, 40 years ago, because it was a different person and it was a different environment. And so learning from age and learning from mentorship and being put in certain situations, but that's really I think the basis of it, just all around, man. He fought the good fight. He did what he was supposed to do, and he did it well, and he did it with enthusiasm, and he complained a little bit, but it was for a reason. And normally that reason was he was able to fix that. So, yeah.
What a beautiful gift to share with others. And especially, when you've been in the Air Force for so long and you've probably seen so many different things, and yet you come out of it at the end, not that you're quite at the end yet, of course, but having that clarity to be able to appreciate everything that you've learnt and this journey that you've been through. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I have loved our conversation today.
Thank you. Me also.
Me too.
You guys, just the questions and just the again, just the opportunity. When Andreza reached out, I was just overjoyed. And the first time I had to, scheduling conflicts, but I was like, there's no way I'll miss that again if she give me that opportunity. And it's been a, just a privilege, especially I think I put it out there a little bit. It's always great to talk to people you admire, and just watching you guys from afar, just absorbing all your content. I knew it would be an amazing conversation. So I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
I think this was a rich conversation about life, about experience. So, wow, amazing. Don't lose the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journey is long.
Yeah.
But we can be innovative, collaborative. So, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danishon. Thank you, Andreza.
Thank you, my friend. So this was our episode from Headline Podcast with Danishon Felder. So it was an incredible conversation here in my studio in Orlando.
And before you turn this video off or this podcast off, if you've listened to us this entire time, we would love if you would like and subscribe. And I know you hear podcasters talk about this all the time, but it's super important. We're getting amazing guests like Danishon on our podcast here, and we just want to continue to do it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, and thank you for subscribing, and see you next time.